The study I'll be talking about today is the effectiveness of virtual rituals in increasing sense of belonging and perceived control in relation to religiosity. To quickly give context to some of the research, the pandemic had a huge effect on people's ability to participate in rituals. Funeral and religious services were canceled, and many had to resort to either individual practice or virtual services. Private and community rituals were both an extremely important part of the grieving process, and the inability to perform some of these rituals or access social supports were detrimental to mental health and isolation during the pandemic. In terms of our definition of the rituals, there were many definitions to choose. However, we chose this one for the purpose of the study. Adherence to specific rules, repetitive in nature, and connection of physical and mental states. Rituals are used in chiefly all cultural contexts. They help maintain group identity and serve as a reminder of group values and help individuals cope with the unknown. It has also been found to decrease anxiety and increase sense of perceived control. Community rituals also have social benefits such as strengthening group connections and can help establish support networks. Grieving rituals in particular are meant to help individuals process the loss and transition mentally and symbolically from a pre-loss to post-loss state. In the pandemic, as people experience kinds of losses, one begs the question, how are people using grieving rituals, specifically in virtual formats, to cope with losses, and how effective are these in helping them cope? The purpose of our study is to gain a better understanding of how effective virtual rituals are, either individually performed or performed with another person, in increasing perceived control and sense of belonging, and determine the correlation between religiosity and the effectiveness of rituals. We are doing 2 studies, but for the sake of time, I'll be focusing on study 2. Our hypothesis for study 2 is that participants with person video will demonstrate a greater sense of control and greater sense of belonging compared to those who are with the no person condition. Furthermore, we also believe that religious identity or religious ritual participation will relate to higher perceived control and higher sense of belonging after doing a ritual. Participants will be randomly assigned. We're looking for roughly 234 Carthage students or online recruits to maintain a 0.9 G power. Half of those will go to study 1 and half to study 2. We are looking at between subject design and correlational design. Some of the materials and measures that we'll be using is a ritual video for study 2, participant materials for study 2, such as paper, pen, scissors, and some of the measures would be level of perceived control, perceived belongingness, and religiosity. In study 2, the participants will be asked to write a short paragraph about something they recently lost as a result of the pandemic. Afterwards, they will either perform a ritual with no person or with a person, as demonstrated in the pictures. In the post-test, we will then ask them to test their lack of perceived control, their perceived belonging, religiosity, followed by a few demographic questions. To test their results, we will be using an independent sample t-test on the person-no person conditions, specifically on sense of belonging and control. We'll also be using a chi-square and correlational test on religiosity. We predict that the rituals will increase levels of perceived control based on previous research. Norton and Gino, our parent study, found significant increase of perceived control when participants engaged in ritual conditions. Other studies found that participation in rituals have significantly helped decrease findings of anxiety among participants. We also predict that the video with the person condition will have a significantly higher effect of belonging compared to those with the no person condition, due to multiple studies that found rituals having a significant effect in group participation and strengthen the social connections. Finally, we predict those who are more religious will find religious rituals significantly more effective than those who are not religious, possibly because a majority of religions have ritual practices that are often performed weekly or daily. Because of the frequent use of rituals, we believe that religious individuals will hold stronger associations to rituals as a form of coping. The purpose of the study was to see the effects of rituals, specifically virtually performed rituals, on increasing perceived control and belonging among religious and non-religious populations. There were a few possible limitations of the study. First, due to the online format as a result of COVID, we have no control over the environment that participants will be doing the study in, nor whether or not they will be actually participating in the ritual conditions. Further research would hopefully not affected by COVID might consider having participants coming into a controlled location, having them complete the study there. Furthermore, the language used in the video might impact how ritualistic the ritual is perceived. For the purpose of trying to make the video less like an experiment, the researchers opted for a more conversational tone. Further research might look into different forms of language and seeing how ritualistic one type of language might seem compared to others. If our hypothesis was not supported, further research we would conduct would look into the different types of rituals that is more universally recognized, or a priming condition that discusses loss in a more general sense. If our hypothesis is supported, further research we would conduct would look into the impact of virtually performed rituals in comparison to in-person rituals. Ultimately, we hope to gain a better understanding of virtual rituals, their cultural significance, and their benefits compared to in-person rituals. In the future, we can use this type of information about rituals during events like the pandemic, or for specialized therapy or forms of coping, or to utilize virtually performed rituals to help others reach out to populations that may not have access to previously traditional forms of treatment. Thank you for taking time watching my presentation.